I got a major exhaust problem. I just finished installing the hoses for the saltwater intake to cool the engine. And I knew this flange back here was leaking, had an exhaust leak. And the previous owner had this, I think he built this exhaust. He had this flange put in with a flex hose. He told me about it. He said it was leaking. He said he thought it needed to be rewelded. He had some fabric, a fabric like tape kind of thing. It was about 2 inches wide, 3 inches wide. It looked like maybe asbestos. And it was wrapped around this flexible pipe here, you see. The stainless steel flexible pipe. And he had it all wrapped around and hose clamped on. And I was running the engine. I ran it a couple times recently. And he said that this flange is leaking, probably needed to be rewelded. Because he had that fabric wrapped around there, I couldn't see anything, but I could feel this, the flange on the left side of your screen was leaking. I could feel it with my hand down at the bottom. The gasket had blown out, so there's two flanges butted up against each other with a gasket in between, and the same thing on the other end. And so I thought, okay, well, that's not going to be too hard to fix. I just need to pull this flange out and put new gasket material in there. That's super easy. But I couldn't get one of the nuts off of the bolt because he had that asbestos tape wrapped around the nut. It went over the top of the nut. I couldn't get a wrench on it. So I had to take that off, and as I started to take it off, I see that this pipe's burnt all the way through. That would have been a disaster. If I had tried to move this boat and this thing had failed and fell apart, it would have, all of the exhaust would have went right into the boat. And the only thing that was kind of keeping it sealed was that fabric that he had wrapped around it. So now I'm going to have to pull this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I can take it to a muffler shop and see if they can redo it for me. I really don't want this in here. I'd like to just get rid of it. I'd like to redo the whole exhaust system. That black hose there, you see, that black hose is the salt water that comes out of the heat exchanger, and it gets blown into the exhaust. It should have been blown into the exhaust closer to the engine to cool these pipes down. And if it was, I could probably just cut those flanges off and put a rubber hose in here on the exhaust part. But as you can see, that the water gets injected into the exhaust past the flange. So yeah, so this part gets hot. The reason I don't want to redo this and just put another one of these in here is because this engine, he rebuilt it, only has 500 hours. And I don't know if this was part of the original exhaust system from the boat. I doubt it. He said he had to have this flange specially made. And so if I put another one in here and another 500 hours, it's going to do the same thing or less. So I don't know what I'm going to do. This is not good. I'm not happy about this at all. So right now, I measured on center. It's about 11 inches, the length of that from the gasket to the other gasket on the other side. And I'm going to pull this out and see if I can figure out what the hell to do with this. This is really bad. This was a disaster waiting to happen. I am so glad I found this. So it was a good thing he had that cloth wrapped over the bolt, because I would have never seen it. Of course, I would have found it anyway, because I was going to have to fix the gaskets, because the one gasket here was leaking. So, at any rate, that's what I'm dealing with now. Just more crap. So, yeah, well, more of it. So, at any rate, he did a great job on rebuilding the engine. The engine runs great, but this is not good. So, at any rate, yeah. So that's what I'm going to have to do. Okay, I'm going to cut this with the I got a new blade on here with this new blade now. The other one was cracked. If they're cracked or have any defect, just get rid of them. You don't want them flying apart in your face. So. Always wear eye protection when you're grinding. And I like to kind of stay over to the side because the metal fragments are going to fly off the wheel in the same angle that the wheel's pointed. And you also want to watch out for stuff bouncing back off anything and hitting you. So, which this here might cause a problem a little bit because I'm going to be up against this. I hope this thing starts. It's been giving me a lot of problems. I'm going to have to clamp this. Okay, I'm going to put some clamps on here to keep it from rolling. Because I have a vise, but it's, I guess I could put it on my step. I have a step that goes up on my boat. I use that as a workbench somewhat. But I think this will work. Okay, it's not going to go anywhere now. So hopefully I'll be able to use both hands on the grinder. It's safer to keep both of your hands on the grinder. Thing about when you're living on a boat, especially when you're sailing places, you got to make do with what you have. So it's good to keep as many tools on board as you can carry, as long as it's stuff that you're going to need. You don't want to carry a lot of stuff you don't need. Okay, got it. So now, this is garbage. And now I'm going to have to grind this down just like this other one. Which I'm going to use this other grinding wheel for that. So I'm going to have to grind this all down and then try to clean this out. I don't know if I can get this cleaned. I may just take it to a machine shop and have them bore this out. And then insert this these pieces of pipe I'm going to cut here for it. So and be careful, it gets hot. Okay, now I switch. Whenever you switch your grinder blade, always unplug your grinder. Okay, this might take a lot of work. I don't know. This may slide around on me. careful. It gets right in the eye. Okay, I had a problem. When I was grinding it, this was sliding around on the ground down here. You don't want to scratch the surface up, because this is going to have a gasket here. Going to seal the exhaust. Plus, there's going to be salt water getting back in there because of the way that he designed the exhaust system. Totally different than what I would have done, but I think I just didn't have really much choice. And I don't know. One of these days I'm going to redo it, but it's going to be challenging. So I'm going to put these screws in here, and that'll keep it from spinning. You also want to be careful when grinding. You can actually catch your clothing on fire. This happened to somebody I knew recently, and he was burned pretty bad. He didn't realize he was on fire for a while. I had a boss at the research farm where I worked. He was welding, and he was using a cutting torch actually, and he caught his pant leg on fire. And he had cowboy boots on, and his pant leg caught on fire. Some slag came off and landed on his pants right down by his boot, the bottom of his pant leg. So I just casually walked over. I didn't say anything to him. Got a bucket of water, came back over, stood next to him, and waited for him to notice that his leg was on fire. And then he started screaming, "Tom!" And I just went, "Shh," and I put it out. And I still had a job after that. This is the extension with the flex tubing, and at any rate, yeah, this is the extension with the flex tubing there in the center, and I had it welded up. Unfortunately, the guy that welded it didn't have any stainless wire, and it should have been stainless, but I was in a hurry. I needed to get this done, so I just had him go ahead and weld it. There's going to be galvanic corrosion because salt water gets into this tube. The exhaust blows through it. Unfortunately, where the exhaust, where the cooling water, salt water that ran through the engine heat exchanger gets blown into the exhaust is right past this flange here, and the pipe runs uphill. So when the engine shuts off, some of the salt water is going to run back down through here, and that's going to cause galvanic corrosion between the dissimilar metals of the weld and the stainless steel. You know, I really should have just done it right, but at any rate, I want to redo this whole exhaust system anyway, so eventually this is all going to be taken out. And I went ahead, and this is a graphite gasket, and I coated the inside here where the weld was, where the weld burned through on the inside of the tube here. I coated it with JB Weld epoxy, high temperature epoxy. It's not going to last. The heat will make the stuff expand a little, and then it'll contract when it gets cold, and it'll keep doing that as I continue to run the engine and shut the engine off. And it's eventually just going to break up and blow out. It's okay. It'll go out. Probably get trapped somewhere inside the exhaust system, but it won't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll probably just burn up. So, at any rate, I'm getting ready to install this down in here. And you can see the other flanges down in there and where it needs to go. So it's kind of an awkward angle, but I did a dry run and made it fit without the gaskets in. Now I'm putting the gaskets in and putting it all in and bolting it up tight. And I'm going to put two U-clamps around the flex hose on each end, and hopefully I won't have any exhaust leaks. And so we'll see what happens. Okay, there it is. New flex tube on my exhaust, and it was not easy to get that on there. It took me just to get it bent and lined up to where I can get the gaskets in without damaging them. It took me probably, I'd say at least 6, maybe 7 hours. And I think the whole project for the day was about 10. It's about 11 o'clock at night right now. And so it's all done, and it shouldn't leak. So one more thing fixed.